The clock on the wall of the Midnight Comet Diner ticked past 3 a.m., its rhythmic sound barely audible over the hum of the ancient refrigerator. Arthur Lexington stared into his coffee cup, watching the ripples form as his hand trembled slightly. The cup was chipped at the rim, much like Arthur himself, once pristine, now damaged by time and circumstance. "More coffee?" The waitress's voice cut through his thoughts. "No thanks, Marie." His voice was rough from disuse. When Marie first started her overnight shift 3 years ago, she tried to engage the quiet man who appeared like clockwork at 2:30 a.m., ordered the same black coffee, and stayed until dawn. She'd given up after months of one-word responses. Some customers carried grief too heavy for small talk. Arthur's reflection in the diner window looked nothing like the man whose face had once graced the cover of Tech Innovator magazine. That Arthur Lexington had confident eyes, a bright smile, and a future as vast as the California coastline. That Arthur had believed in miracles. This Arthur, with hollow cheeks and permanent creases between his brows, believed only in loss. Just 7 years ago, his life had been perfect. His AI startup, Innovate Solutions, had secured their Series B funding. Their office overlooked Silicon Valley, a daily reminder of how far he'd climbed from his humble beginnings. His luxury mansion nestled in the hills boasted a nursery with hand-painted stars on the ceiling. Those stars were for Luna and Stella, his twin daughters, his miracles. After years of fertility treatments and heartbreak, Elara had given birth to 2 perfect girls. Arthur remembered holding them for the first time, their tiny bodies fitting perfectly in his arms, their eyes wide with wonder. "They're looking at the stars, Arthur," Elara had whispered, her face glowing with maternal pride despite her exhaustion. "Our little astronomers." For 2 blissful years, their family constellation had been complete. Elara's laughter echoed through their home as the twins took their first steps across the polished hardwood floors. Arthur built his company during the day and built blanket forts with his daughters at night. Then came the diagnosis: aggressive, untreatable, terminal. Arthur pulled himself from the memory, his fingers tightening around the coffee cup. The diner's fluorescent light highlighted the calluses on his hands, hands that once typed code and signed million-dollar contracts, now stained with motor oil from the garage where he worked. After Elara died, everything unfolded like a terrible dream. The new wife who seemed so caring, the mysterious disappearance of his daughters, the accusations, the fruitless searches, the bankruptcy, the abandonment. 5 years of emptiness. 5 years of scanning every crowd for 2 little faces that were gradually fading from his memory. What Arthur didn't know, what he couldn't possibly imagine as he sat in that diner, was that in less than 24 hours, he would stand in a decrepit motel room on the outskirts of Las Vegas, staring into the eyes of 2 frightened little girls. And in that moment, everything he thought he knew about his daughter's disappearance would crumble, revealing a truth more heartbreaking and miraculous than anything he could have conceived. The $20 in his wallet and the few thousand in his savings account would soon purchase something beyond price, a second chance that would transform him from a broken man into something he'd stopped believing he could ever be again: a father. But right now, in the Midnight Comet Diner, Arthur was just another lost soul, counting down the hours until he could face another day of meaningless existence. He left his usual $5 tip, an extravagance he couldn't afford, but a kindness he couldn't abandon, and stepped into the pre-dawn darkness, unaware that the course of his life was about to change forever. Have you ever felt that empty ache of losing someone precious? That hollow feeling that nothing will ever be right again? For Arthur Lexington, that feeling had become his only companion. But what if I told you that sometimes in our darkest moments, fate has a way of bringing the light back when we least expect it? This is the story of a broken man, 2 lost little girls, and a journey that will make you question everything you thought you knew about the bonds between parent and child. If you believe that some connections are too powerful to be severed, even by time, distance, or deception, then stay with me. Because Arthur's story isn't just about loss. It's about a father's love that refused to die, even when all hope seemed lost. Hit that like button if you've ever believed in second chances, and subscribe now, because what happens next in this incredible true story will shake you to your core. Arthur's rise and fall. 7 years earlier, Arthur Lexington stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, watching the San Francisco fog roll in. The view from the 30th floor never failed to remind him how far he'd come, from a scholarship kid coding in his dorm room to the CEO of Innovate Solutions, the AI startup that industry insiders predicted would revolutionize predictive analytics. "Mr. Lexington?" His assistant appeared at the door. "Your wife is on line 1. She says it's urgent." Arthur grabbed the phone, his heart racing. "Ilara, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," Ilara laughed, the sound making him smile automatically. "The doctor called. Arthur, we're pregnant." After 3 years of fertility treatments, those words seemed impossible. When they learned they were having twins, Arthur felt he'd won a lottery he never knew existed. The day Luna and Stella were born changed Arthur forever. The identical girls arrived 5 minutes apart, tiny bundles with curious eyes that seemed to contain all the wisdom of the universe. "They're perfect," he whispered to Ilara, who lay exhausted but radiant in the hospital bed. "They're ours," she replied, tears streaming down her face. "Our little miracle girls." Their first 2 years as parents were a blur of first smiles, first steps, and first words. Arthur scaled back his 80-hour work weeks to be home for bedtime stories. The mansion they'd purchased in the hills became a true home, filled with laughter, scattered toys, and the kind of happiness that feels eternal when you're living it. The morning everything changed started like any other. Arthur was reviewing quarterly projections while Ilara packed lunches for the twins' playdate. When he heard the crash from the kitchen, he thought she'd dropped a plate. He found her on the floor, unconscious. By evening, they had the diagnosis, a rare, aggressive form of cancer that had metastasized throughout her body. "How long?" Arthur asked the oncologist. Ilara's hand gripped tightly in his. "Months," the doctor said quietly. "Maybe weeks." Arthur threw everything he had into saving her. His money, his time, his soul. He consulted specialists across the country. He researched experimental treatments. He prayed to gods he'd never believed in. None of it mattered. Ilara faded before his eyes, her vibrant spirit dimming daily. In their final coherent conversation, she made him promise to keep the girls close. "They'll forget me," she whispered, her once melodic voice rough with pain. "Never," Arthur vowed. "I'll tell them about you every day. They'll know their mother's love." When Ilara took her final breath, Arthur felt half of himself die with her. He stumbled through the following weeks, barely functioning, held together only by the responsibility of caring for 2-year-old twins who couldn't understand why mommy wasn't coming home. It was during these darkest days that Cassandra entered their lives. A nurse at the hospice where Ilara spent her final weeks, Cassandra had soft brown eyes and a gentle way with the twins that made Arthur think perhaps she was an answer to his desperate prayers. "You need help, Arthur," she told him one evening after bringing dinner for the family. "You're trying to run a company and raise 2 toddlers while grieving. It's too much for anyone." Cassandra became their lifeline. She helped with the girls, organized the household, and offered Arthur something he desperately needed, the hope that he wouldn't have to face the future alone. When she suggested marriage less than a year after Ilara's death, Arthur hesitated only briefly. The twins needed a mother figure. He needed a partner. The small ceremony at City Hall felt practical rather than romantic, but Arthur convinced himself this was what moving forward looked like. For a few months, the arrangement seemed to work. Cassandra managed the home while Arthur tried to salvage his neglected company, which had suffered during Ilara's illness. The medical bills had drained much of their savings, but Arthur was certain he could rebuild. Then gradually, things began to shift. Cassandra's shopping excursions became more frequent. Her credit card bills mounted. When Arthur mentioned scaling back expenses, her warmth vanished. "I thought I married a successful man," she snapped, "not someone who counts pennies." Arthur began noticing other changes too. Cassandra's patience with the twins wore thin. Luna would flinch when Cassandra reached toward her. Stella became withdrawn, no longer singing the little songs she'd loved. When Arthur questioned these changes, Cassandra dismissed his concerns. "Children need discipline, Arthur. Ilara spoiled them." The mention of Ilara's name in such a context felt like a physical blow. Arthur began coming home earlier, watching more closely. But between his attempts to save the failing company and his grief-fogged brain, he missed the critical signs of what was happening. Until that terrible Wednesday when his phone rang during an investor meeting. "Mr. Lexington, this is Detective Moore. Your wife reported your daughter's missing from Westlake Park approximately 2 hours ago." The world tilted on its axis. Arthur abandoned the meeting mid-sentence, racing to the park where a cluster of police cars gathered. Cassandra stood talking to officers, tears streaming down her face. "I only looked away for a minute," she sobbed when she saw him. "They were on the swings and then they were gone." The next 48 hours were a blur of search parties, police interviews, and mounting terror. Luna and Stella's photos appeared on local news, then national broadcasts. Tips flooded in, each leading nowhere. As days stretched into weeks, the police investigation cooled. Cassandra's story never wavered. A momentary distraction, a glimpse of a dark van, a parent's worst nightmare. But something didn't add up. The park cameras had been malfunctioning that day. No witnesses came forward. The twins had simply vanished, as if they'd never existed. 6 months after the disappearance, Innovate Solutions collapsed. Arthur had been absent too long, distracted too deeply. Investors pulled out. The mansion went on the market to cover debts. Arthur didn't care. Without Luna and Stella, nothing mattered. A year after the twins vanished, Cassandra left too. "I can't live with a ghost," she told him as she packed her bags. "You're not the man I married." Just like that, Arthur Lexington, once celebrated as a tech visionary destined for greatness, found himself alone in a rented one-bedroom apartment, working as a mechanic because the garage owner had taken pity on him. Every night he whispered goodnight to daughters who weren't there. Every morning he woke reaching for a wife who was gone forever. His once brilliant mind now focused on a single consuming question. Where are my girls? The bond between a parent and child runs deeper than blood, stronger than time, more powerful than distance. For Arthur, that bond was the only thing keeping him alive. He felt his daughters somewhere in the world, lost, perhaps afraid, but alive. And as long as they breathed, he would search. If you've ever loved someone so much that losing them felt like losing yourself, hit that like button. Because Arthur's journey into darkness has only begun, and the light waiting at the end will change everything you believe about the power of a father's love. 5 years passed. Arthur's hands, once soft from typing code and signing contracts, grew calloused and rough. Every morning at 6 a.m., he'd slide beneath cars at Rodriguez Auto Repair, fixing transmissions and replacing spark plugs. The rhythmic work of mechanics offered a strange comfort. Broken things that could actually be fixed, unlike his shattered life. The small apartment above a convenience store became home, though Arthur never hung pictures or bought furniture beyond the essentials. The walls remained bare except for a massive map marked with red pins, every location he'd searched, every false lead he'd pursued. Beside his bed sat 2 stuffed rabbits, once cherished by Luna and Stella, now his only tangible connection to them. "You're killing yourself, man," Miguel, the garage owner, would say when Arthur worked double shifts. "Take a break." But breaks meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering. So Arthur worked until his muscles screamed, then drove Uber until midnight, scanning the backseat faces in his rearview mirror, always searching. On Sundays, his only concession to routine, he'd visit different neighborhoods with fresh, missing posters. The twins' photos had yellowed with time, smiling 2-year-olds frozen forever. Arthur calculated their growth in his mind. 7 now. Would their eyes still crinkle when they laughed? Would they still love strawberry ice cream? "I've seen you here before," a woman told him once as he taped a poster to a community board. "Same kids. It's been years." "My daughters," Arthur replied simply. "Maybe it's time to let go," she suggested gently. "For your own peace." Arthur just shook his head. Peace wasn't possible without answers. The police file on Luna and Stella Lexington gathered dust in a cabinet downtown. The detective assigned to their case had retired. Tips had stopped coming. The world had moved on from the sad story of the tech CEO who lost everything, including his daughters. Everyone except Arthur. He'd spent thousands on private investigators, depleting what little remained after Cassandra's theft. He joined search groups for missing children, attended support meetings where parents sat in circles, clutching photos like precious artifacts. Some found solidarity there. Arthur felt only hollow emptiness. Grief without a body is its own special hell, an elderly man told him at one meeting. The not knowing eats at your soul. Arthur nodded, understanding perfectly. Not knowing if Luna and Stella were scared, hurt, or even alive tortured him daily. He imagined them calling for him while he couldn't reach them. The thought kept him awake night after night, staring at the water stains on his ceiling. Friends from his previous life had drifted away. Uncomfortable with his transformation from successful entrepreneur to obsessed, grieving father. Invitations stopped. Calls went unreturned. Arthur became a ghost in his own community, a cautionary tale of how quickly fortune could turn. The isolation might have crushed him completely if not for his unwavering conviction. Luna and Stella were alive. He felt it with certainty that defied logic, a connection that transcended physical separation. Sometimes he'd wake suddenly, heart pounding, filled with the overwhelming sensation that they needed him. Those moments renewed his determination, pushing him forward when exhaustion threatened to overcome him. On a sweltering July afternoon, Arthur was beneath a 1998 Honda Civic, replacing a rusted muffler, when he heard unfamiliar voices near the back alley door. Two men speaking in hushed tones by the dumpsters. He might have ignored them, if not for specific words that cut through the garage noise. The twins arriving tomorrow need special handling. Arthur froze, wrenched mid-turn. Age? Asked the second voice. Around 7. Girls. Skittish ones. Previous handler wants them moved quickly. Arthur's heart hammered against his ribs. 7-year-old twin girls, the same age Luna and Stella would be now. Vegas drop point? The second man sounded bored, like they were discussing a furniture delivery. Yeah, the old motel past the strip. Odessa's handling placement. Arthur barely breathed as they continued discussing merchandise and transportation routes. His mind raced. He'd read enough about trafficking networks to recognize the coded language. Children being moved through a pipeline of exploitation. The men eventually walked away, their conversations shifting to mundane topics. Arthur remained motionless beneath the car, the implications of what he'd heard crystallizing into horrifying clarity. For 5 years, he'd followed every possible lead about his daughters. For 5 years, he'd hit dead ends. But this felt different. A terrible suspicion formed. What if Cassandra hadn't lost the girls in the park that day? What if she'd sold them? The thought burned through him like acid. It explained the convenient camera malfunction, the lack of witnesses, Cassandra's perfectly consistent story. It explained how she'd managed to disappear afterward with unexpected financial resources. That night, Arthur didn't drive Uber. Instead, he sat at his kitchen table, mapping the quickest route to Las Vegas. He counted his savings, $4,120, meticulously gathered for the private investigator he'd planned to hire next month. It would have to be enough. Miguel raised an eyebrow when Arthur requested emergency time off the next morning. Family emergency, Arthur explained, the words more truthful than he'd spoken in years. You coming back? Miguel asked, sensing something different in Arthur's demeanor. I hope so, Arthur replied, with my daughters. The drive to Las Vegas took 5 hours. Arthur's ancient Toyota truck complained on the steep desert inclines, but he pushed forward, fueled by a dangerous mixture of hope and dread. He had no plan beyond finding the motel mentioned in the conversation. He had no weapon beyond his desperate determination. He had no allies, no backup, no safety net. What he did have was nothing left to lose. As the Las Vegas skyline appeared on the horizon, a jarring collection of gleaming towers rising from the desert floor, Arthur gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles whitened. Somewhere in that maze of lights and shadows, a transaction was about to occur. Children, perhaps his children, treated as commodities. The thought nearly broke him. But breaking would mean failing them again, and this time, failure wasn't an option. What awaits Arthur in the shadows of Las Vegas? Could these twin girls possibly be his Luna and Stella? And if they are, what unimaginable horrors have they endured in the 5 years since their disappearance? If you're holding your breath for what happens next, Hit that subscribe button now, because Arthur's about to walk into the lion's den with nothing but a father's desperate courage, and what he discovers there will change everything. The most heart-stopping moment of this incredible
Las Vegas
journey
shimmered
is just
in the
around the
distance.
corner, a mirage of neon and promise against the stark desert landscape. Arthur pulled his truck into a gas station on the outskirts, his body aching from the long drive and sleepless night. The dashboard clock read 2:47 p.m. He splashed water on his face in the grimy bathroom, staring at his reflection. Hollow eyes, stubbled jaw, the face of a man on the edge. He needed a plan. Walking blindly into a trafficking operation would get him killed, or worse, seen, reported, and removed before he could find the twins. Arthur's tech background had taught him one essential truth: information was power. Before confronting Odessa, he needed reconnaissance. The motel wasn't difficult to find. The Starlight Rest, its sign missing several letters, stood isolated on a forgotten stretch of highway 5 miles from the glittering strip. The two-story structure curved around a cracked, empty swimming pool, its paint peeling under the merciless Nevada sun. Arthur parked across the street at a truck stop, observing through binoculars as various cars came and went. By nightfall, he'd identified the pattern. Room 1112, ground floor, rear corner. Multiple visitors, brief stays. A woman in her 50s with dyed blonde hair and a permanent scowl appeared to be in charge. Odessa, he presumed. Her cold efficiency as she directed visitors made his stomach turn. Arthur formulated his cover story carefully. A wealthy business traveler, looking for something special. New to this, but referred by a trusted associate. He removed his wedding ring, donned his one decent button-down shirt kept in the truck for emergencies, and buried his moral revulsion beneath a mask of determined calculation. At precisely 10:30 p.m., he crossed the parking lot and knocked on room 112. The door opened a crack, revealing a slice of the blonde woman's face. "We're closed," she said flatly. Arthur swallowed hard. "I heard you might have some fresh arrivals." My associate in Los Angeles mentioned twins? Her eyes narrowed, assessing him with practiced suspicion. "Who referred you?" Arthur had prepared for this. "The gentleman discussing the delivery behind Rodriguez Auto Shop yesterday. I overheard them. I'm new to this, but very interested and financially prepared." A tense moment passed before the door opened wider. "Search him," Odessa instructed a large man standing just inside. Rough hands patted Arthur down, finding nothing threatening. The room smelled of cigarettes and cheap perfume. A laptop on the desk displayed spreadsheets. Inventory, Arthur realized with disgust. Human inventory. "You a cop?" Odessa asked bluntly. "I'm a businessman who values discretion," Arthur replied, forcing confidence into his voice. "I understand you have twins arriving?" "Arrived this morning," Odessa corrected, lighting a cigarette. 7 years old, identical, unusual merchandise. She named a price that would have shocked Arthur in his previous life. "May I see them first?" he asked, heart thundering. Odessa studied him. "First timer, huh? Fine, but just looking, no touching. If you waste my time, there's a fee." She led him across the courtyard to room 118. 3 locks secured the door, deadbolt, chain, and a padlock. The message was clear. Whatever was inside wasn't meant to leave. 10 minutes, Odessa said, unlocking the door. "They don't talk much." The smell hit Arthur first. Unwashed bodies, fear, and hopelessness. The room was dark except for the bathroom light casting long shadows across the worn carpet. And there, huddled together on a bare mattress in the corner, were 2 small figures. Arthur's heart stopped. Twin girls, painfully thin. Long, tangled hair partially obscuring their faces. They wore mismatched clothes several sizes too large. When the light from the doorway reached them, they flinched in unison, pressing closer together like wounded animals, expecting another blow. "As you can see, they're intact. Clean them up. They'll be presentable." Odessa spoke with clinical detachment. "Matching set. Rare find." Arthur struggled to keep his expression neutral as rage and heartbreak warred within him. Were these his daughters? He couldn't tell. 5 years had passed. The frightened, malnourished children before him bore little resemblance to his laughing toddlers. "Can I have some privacy? To assess?" he asked, his voice miraculously steady. Odessa hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. I'll be right outside. When the door closed, Arthur crouched low, keeping his distance to avoid frightening the girls further. Hi, he whispered. I won't hurt you, I promise. They stared back with identical expressions of wary disbelief. How many false promises had they heard? My name is Arthur, he continued softly. I'm going to get you out of here. No response, not even a flicker of hope in their eyes. Arthur's mind raced. If these were Luna and Stella, they wouldn't remember him. They'd been only 2 when they vanished. But perhaps, when I was a little boy, he whispered, my mother sang me a special lullaby. I sang it to my daughters too. He hummed a few notes of the melody that had been Alara's favorite. The slightly smaller girl's eyes widened almost imperceptibly. Arthur's pulse quickened. My little stars, he murmured, the nickname he'd used for his twins. The second girl's gaze darted to his wrist, where a faint star-shaped birthmark was visible beneath his sleeve, a mark Luna had always been fascinated by. It was enough, a thread of possibility. Whether these were his daughters or not, he couldn't leave them here. The decision crystallized with absolute clarity. He would buy these children, this merchandise, to save them. The moral complexity of this choice wasn't lost on him. By participating in this transaction, was he perpetuating the very system he despised? Or was the rescue of these specific children worth a compromise? There was no time for ethical debate, only action. When Odessa returned, Arthur nodded briskly. I'll take them. Full payment up front, she replied. Cash only. I'll need to go to an ATM, Arthur said. I didn't bring that much cash with me. Odessa's eyes narrowed with suspicion. You have 1 hour. Leave your driver's license as collateral. The next 60 minutes were the longest of Arthur's life. He emptied his checking account. He maxed out his credit card with cash advances. He counted out bills at the motel office desk under Odessa's cold gaze. His entire life savings spread before him. The price of 2 children's freedom. Paperwork, Odessa said, sliding a folder toward him after confirming the amount. Nothing official, obviously. Just our standard release of liability. Arthur's hands shook as he signed the document, bile rising in his throat at the clinical language disguising the horror of what was happening. He was purchasing children as if they were commodities. They're your problem now, Odessa said, handing him a room key. You can clean them up here if you want. Checkout is 11 a.m. When she left, Arthur rushed back to room 118. The girls hadn't moved, their expressions unchanged. We're leaving, he said gently. You're safe now. He approached slowly, offering his hand. Neither child moved to take it. I know you're scared, he continued. I would be too, but I promise, no one will hurt you again. After a painful hesitation, the smaller girl reached for her sister's hand, then stood. The other followed. They moved as one unit, never separating, never speaking. Arthur guided them to his truck, hyper-aware of how this must appear to any observer. A middle-aged man leading 2 frightened children from a motel room in the middle of the night. He helped them into the back seat, where they pressed against each other, watching him with guarded eyes. As he drove away from the starlight rest, the weight of what he'd just done crashed over him. He'd emptied his bank accounts. He had 2 traumatized children and no plan beyond escaping. If these weren't Luna and Stella, he'd just committed a crime, however moral his intentions. But looking in the rearview mirror at the twin girls huddled together, Arthur felt something he hadn't experienced in 5 years. Purpose. Whether they were his daughters or not, they needed him, and he would protect them with his life. The drive back to Los Angeles was silent. Arthur stopped once for gas and food, which the girls accepted but barely touched. By dawn, they were crossing the city limits, the familiar skyline emerging through morning mist. Arthur drove to his apartment, carrying the sleeping girls up the stairs when they wouldn't wake. He placed them gently on his bed, covering them with a clean blanket. As he backed away, planning to sleep on his worn couch, the smaller girl's eyes fluttered open. Safe? She whispered. The first word either had spoken. Yes, Arthur promised, his voice breaking. You're safe now. She studied his face for a long moment before closing her eyes again, her body relaxing slightly against her sister's. Arthur watched them from the doorway, 1,000 questions burning in his mind. Who were these children? What had they endured? And was it possible, truly possible, that after 5 years of emptiness, his daughters had returned to him through the darkest of circumstances? The answers would come with time. For now they slept, and Arthur kept vigil, ready to face whatever challenges the morning would bring. Is your heart racing yet? Because the most incredible part of this story is just beginning. These traumatized twins have found safety with Arthur, but neither they nor he yet realize the true connection that binds them. Hit that subscribe button now, because in our next segment, a simple lullaby and a star-shaped birthmark will trigger a revelation that will leave you breathless. The moment of truth is coming, and you won't want to miss a second of it. Morning arrived with soft sunlight filtering through Arthur's faded curtains. He'd spent the night on his lumpy couch, jerking awake at the slightest sound, afraid the girls might disappear again. When he finally heard movement from the bedroom, he approached the door with gentle caution. "Breakfast?" he offered, keeping his distance. The twins sat rigid on the edge of the bed, shoulders touching, eyes tracking his every movement, like prey animals monitoring a potential predator. They didn't respond, but their gaze flicked toward the hallway, curious but terrified. Arthur moved slowly, narrating his actions. "I'm going to the kitchen now. You can stay here if you want. The bathroom is there. You're not locked in. You can move around freely." Freedom was a concept they seemed unable to process. For the first 3 days, they refused to separate, even to use the bathroom. They ate little, spoke less, and flinched at sudden movements. They slept in their clothes, curled protectively around each other. Arthur called Miguel, inventing a family emergency that required extended leave. Then he focused entirely on creating safety for these fragile children. "My name is Arthur," he reminded them daily, never pushing for their names in return. "This is your home now, for as long as you want it to be." By the 4th day, the smaller twin accepted a clean t-shirt, one of Arthur's, swimming on her thin frame. Her sister followed suit an hour later. Small victories that brought tears to Arthur's eyes. He established a gentle routine. Breakfast at the same time. Quiet activities, drawing, simple puzzles. No television, which seemed to overwhelm them with noise and movement. Regular meals, always the same plates, always the same place at the table. "You're safe" became his mantra, repeated constantly. On day 7, the breakthrough came. Arthur was washing dishes when he realized the larger twin stood in the kitchen doorway, watching him. "Would you like some water?" he asked, keeping his voice neutral. She didn't speak, but nodded almost imperceptibly. Progress. By the 2nd week, they had begun to explore the apartment, though never alone. Arthur bought children's clothes, guessing their sizes. He found children's books at a thrift store, setting them on the coffee table without pressure. One evening, he returned from the bathroom to find the smaller girl holding a book, her finger tracing the illustration of stars on the page. "Do you like stars?" Arthur asked gently. She didn't answer, but didn't close the book either. "I used to know 2 little girls who loved stars," he continued softly. Their mother named them after stars, Luna and Stella. The twins exchanged a quick glance. Something flickered across their faces. Recognition? Memory? Arthur couldn't tell. That night, he heard whispering for the first time, hushed conversations in the darkness that stopped whenever he approached. They were communicating, processing, perhaps even remembering. By the 3rd week, they had begun to trust the pattern of safety. They no longer startled when Arthur moved around the apartment. They ate regularly, color returning to their cheeks. The smaller one had even smiled once, a tiny, hesitant curve of her lips, when Arthur dropped a spoon and muttered, "Butterfingers," to himself. On a quiet Sunday evening, exactly 23 days after leaving Las Vegas, Arthur sat on the floor of the living room, keeping a respectful distance as the girls colored with crayons he'd purchased. The simple domesticity of the moment felt both foreign and achingly familiar. Without conscious thought, Arthur began to hum, a soft, melodic lullaby that Alara had sung countless times to Luna and Stella. The tune had lived in his muscle memory, dormant but preserved. The smaller twin's crayon stopped mid-stroke. Her head tilted slightly, like a bird hearing a distant call. Arthur continued the melody, watching as her expression shifted from concentration to confusion to something deeper, a struggling recognition. Her lips parted, and in a voice rusty from disuse, she began to hum along, tentative at first, then with growing confidence. The notes aligned perfectly with Arthur's, creating a harmony that sent chills racing down his spine. "You know this song," he whispered, his hand trembling. The girl nodded slowly, then spoke her first complete sentence. "Mommy sang it before she went to heaven." Arthur's world tilted, his vision blurred with tears as he fought to keep his voice steady. "What was your mommy's name?" The twins exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. The larger one answered, her voice equally small but clear. "Ilara." The name hung in the air like a revelation. Arthur couldn't breathe, couldn't move, afraid to shatter this impossible moment. The larger twin frowned suddenly, studying Arthur's face with new intensity. Her gaze traveled to his exposed wrist, where the star-shaped birthmark had always been, a constellation of freckles that formed a rough pentagram. She rose from her spot on the floor, approaching Arthur with unprecedented boldness. Her small finger reached out, hovering over the mark. "Papa's star," she whispered. "Luna always touched Papa's star." Arthur's heart stopped completely. "Luna," he managed, his voice breaking on the name. The smaller twin looked up, responding to the name that had been stolen from her. "I'm Luna," she said softly, confusion and hope battling across her features. "And I'm Stella," the other added, her finger still tracing the birthmark. You're our papa?" The question contained universes of loss, pain, and fragile hope. Arthur could no longer hold back his tears. They streamed freely down his face as he nodded, unable to form words. "We got lost," Stella continued, her young voice struggling to articulate years of trauma. "The mean lady took us away." "But you found us," Luna finished, the twins' ability to complete each other's thoughts apparently undiminished by their ordeal. Arthur opened his arms, offering rather than taking. After a breathless pause, both girls moved forward simultaneously, collapsing against his chest. His arms encircled them, gently, reverently, holding his daughters for the first time in 5 agonizing years. "I never stopped looking," he whispered into their hair. "Not for one day." They clung to him with desperate strength, their small bodies shaking with sobs. Arthur rocked them gently. The missing pieces of his heart finally returned to him. The miracle had happened, against impossible odds, through years of darkness, across a gulf of unimaginable suffering. Father and daughters had found their way back to each other. Do you believe in miracles? Because what you just witnessed transcends coincidence. After 5 years of separation, Arthur has found his daughters, or perhaps they found him. If this reunion has touched your heart, hit that like button to celebrate this incredible moment of healing. But stay with us because the journey isn't over. How will Arthur bring Cassandra to justice? What happened to the twins during those missing years? Subscribe now to discover how this family rebuilds from the ashes of betrayal. The most powerful part of their story is just beginning. The days following the revelation unfolded in a delicate balance of joy and heartbreak. Arthur created a safe space for Luna and Stella to share their experiences, never pushing, always listening. Their memories emerged in fragments, often during quiet moments, while drawing during bedtime or over breakfast. "The mean lady told us you didn't want us anymore," Luna whispered one evening, her small hands fidgeting with a crayon. "She said you gave us away." Arthur's heart shattered anew. "I never stopped looking for you, not for one single day." "She took us to a dark house first," Stella added, "with other kids. They put us in a van." The twins described being moved multiple times, changing handlers, as Odessa had called them. They'd been taught to stay silent, to be invisible. Disobedience meant no food. Their world had shrunk to survival, protecting each other, enduring each day. "Did you ever see the mean lady again, after she took you?" Arthur asked carefully. His rage at Cassandra contained behind a gentle expression. Both girls nodded. "She came to check sometimes," Luna said. She got money. This confirmation of Cassandra's continued involvement steeled Arthur's resolve. This wasn't just about reuniting with his daughters. It was about justice, about ensuring Cassandra could never harm another child. But Arthur faced a daunting challenge. How could he legally prove the twins were his daughters? Their disappearance had been reported as a kidnapping by unknown persons. Cassandra had played the grieving stepmother perfectly, and he had essentially purchased children through an illegal network. His first step was obtaining new birth certificates, claiming he'd lost the originals. With these, he scheduled appointments with pediatricians and child psychologists specializing in trauma. The medical examinations confirmed what Arthur already knew. The twins were severely undernourished and showed signs of neglect, though mercifully, no evidence of physical abuse. DNA testing was next. The results were conclusive. Luna and Stella Lexington were, without question, Arthur's biological children. Armed with this evidence, Arthur sought legal help. Through a community center offering pro bono services, he met Aliyah Hassan, a former prosecutor who now specialized in child advocacy cases. "I need to be honest with you," Arthur told her, explaining the entire story, including how he'd acquired the twins from Odessa. "I know I broke the law, but I had to get them out." Aliyah listened without judgment, her sharp eyes taking in every detail. Unlike other lawyers Arthur had consulted, she didn't immediately dismiss the case as hopeless. "What you did was technically illegal," she acknowledged, "but no reasonable prosecutor would charge a father for rescuing his own trafficked children. The real criminal is Cassandra." Together, they developed a strategy. Aliyah contacted Detective Raymond Chen, a specialized investigator with the Human Trafficking Task Force. Chen approached the case with appropriate skepticism until the DNA results and the twins' testimonies convinced him to reopen the investigation. "These girls have been through enough," Chen told Arthur. "We'll handle the interviews with extreme care." Luna and Stella met with forensic child psychologists trained to gather testimony without re-traumatizing victims. Their accounts, though delivered in childish terms, painted a damning picture of calculated betrayal. Not a random kidnapping, but a deliberate sale by their own stepmother. The investigation gained momentum. Financial records revealed suspicious cash deposits to Cassandra's accounts immediately following the twins' disappearance. Phone records showed calls to numbers associated with known trafficking networks. "We've got enough for a warrant," Chen informed Arthur and Aliyah 3 months after beginning the investigation. "We've located her in Miami." Arthur insisted on being present for the arrest. "She took everything from me," he said firmly. "I need to see her face when justice catches up with her." The confrontation occurred at an upscale property management office in Miami's financial district. Arthur, accompanied by Chen and 2 local officers, watched as Cassandra emerged from the building, stylishly dressed and smiling, a woman without apparent burdens. When she spotted Arthur standing beside the unmarked police car, that smile vanished. For one telling moment, pure shock registered on her face before she composed herself. "Arthur, is that you?" she called out, feigning surprise and delight. "After all this time." "We found them, Cassandra," Arthur said simply. "Luna and Stella. They told us everything." The blood drained from her face. Before she could respond, Detective Chen stepped forward, identifying himself and reading her rights as the officers moved to handcuff her. "This is absurd," Cassandra protested, her voice rising. "Arthur, tell them this is a mistake." Arthur met her gaze steadily. "The only mistake was ever trusting you with my daughters." As the officers led her to the waiting car, Cassandra's carefully constructed facade crumbled. "They were just holding you back," she shouted, abandoning all pretense. "You were wasting all that money on babysitters and toys while I got nothing." Her unintentional confession, witnessed by law enforcement and recorded on body cameras, was the final nail in her legal coffin. The prosecution built an airtight case. Cassandra had orchestrated the fake kidnapping, selling the twins to a trafficking network for a substantial sum. She had periodically checked on them, not out of concern, but to ensure the ongoing payments from subsequent placements as the girls were moved through the system. During the trial, Arthur shielded Luna and Stella from the proceedings, though their recorded testimonies proved crucial. Medical experts, financial investigators, and even Odessa herself, who accepted a plea deal, testified against Cassandra. The media attention was intense. Headlines proclaimed the incredible story. Father finds and rescues daughters 5 years after disappearance, and evil stepmother sold twins for profit. What began as a local case quickly captured national attention. Morning shows featured experts discussing the case. News specials explored the broader issues of child trafficking. Arthur declined all interview requests, focusing solely on his daughter's healing. Public support manifested in unexpected ways. A GoFundMe campaign started by Miguel from the garage raised over $100 in 3 days. Letters and gifts arrived from across the country. A prominent child psychologist offered free lifetime therapy for the twins. A real estate developer provided a 3-bedroom house in a safe neighborhood with a year of paid rent. After 2 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 4 hours. The verdict? Guilty on all counts. The judge, a mother of 3 herself, delivered the maximum sentence. The court cannot find words adequate to describe the depravity of your actions, she told Cassandra. You betrayed the most fundamental trust between parent and child, and you did so for financial gain. You will serve consecutive sentences for each charge, ensuring you never again have the opportunity to harm a child. As Cassandra was led away, Arthur felt no triumph, only a profound relief that this chapter was closing. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. Arthur spoke briefly, his voice steady. Today isn't about punishment. It's about protection. My daughters are safe now. Other children will be safe from this network. We're grateful to everyone who helped bring this to justice, and we ask for privacy as we heal and rebuild our family. The investigation expanded beyond Cassandra, leading to numerous additional arrests. Odessa's operation collapsed. Children were rescued, including 6 others who had been trafficked through the same channels as Luna and Stella. Back home, away from the courtroom drama and media attention, healing continued in small, precious moments. Luna laughing at a butterfly landing on her shoulder. Stella proudly showing Arthur her first complete sentence written in school. The twins sleeping peacefully in their new bedroom, decorated with the stars they'd been named for. One evening, as Arthur tucked them in, Stella asked the question he'd been waiting for. Are the bad people all gone now, Papa? Arthur smoothed her hair gently. Yes, sweetheart. They can't hurt you or any other children anymore. Because you never stopped looking for us, Luna added sleepily. And I never will stop protecting you, Arthur promised. Not ever. Justice has finally been served. Cassandra's evil scheme has been exposed, and she'll spend decades behind bars for what she did to Luna and Stella. But while courtroom justice is satisfying, the real victory is happening quietly in Arthur's home, where 2 little girls are learning to trust and love again. If you believe that justice was served in this incredible case, hit that like button right now. But there's one more chapter to this remarkable story. How does a family rebuild after such trauma? How do Luna and Stella adjust to normal life? And what unexpected purpose does Arthur discover through this ordeal? Subscribe now to find out how this family transforms their pain into purpose in our final segment. 1 year after the trial, Arthur stood at a podium in the grand ballroom of the Beverly Wilshire Hotel. Behind him hung a banner displaying the Twin Stars Foundation logo, 2 bright stars connected by a protective arc. Before him sat hundreds of donors, child welfare advocates, law enforcement specialists, and survivors. When my daughters were taken, Arthur began, his voice steady, I lost everything. My career, my home, my hope. But their return taught me that some losses can be temporary if we refuse to give up. He paused, looking toward the side of the stage where Luna and Stella sat with their therapist. And some gifts, once returned, inspire us to help others find their way home too. The Twin Stars Foundation had begun modestly, a website, a small office, and Arthur's unwavering commitment to protecting vulnerable children. Using the settlement from the civil suit against Cassandra's accomplices and donations that poured in after the trial, Arthur assembled a team of experts, trauma counselors, former FBI agents specializing in child recovery, and legal advocates. Their mission was threefold: rescue trafficked children, provide comprehensive recovery support, and strengthen nationwide prevention measures. In its first year, the foundation had already helped recover 17 children and had established a sanctuary house where survivors could heal in safety. For Luna and Stella, now 8 years old, recovery proceeded in its own rhythm. Nightmares gradually became less frequent. Therapy, both individual and family sessions, provided tools to process their trauma. Small triumphs accumulated, Luna joining a children's astronomy club, Stella discovering a talent for painting. Both girls learning to trust adults outside their immediate circle. Their new home, a modest but comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood, became a place of joy rather than simply safety. The backyard featured a treehouse Arthur built himself, its roof adorned with glow-in-the-dark stars. Inside, photos chronicled their journey. Baby pictures Arthur had preserved, current images of school events and birthdays, and the treasured middle years represented by age progression photos created by a forensic artist. A compassionate attempt to reclaim the lost time. Arthur's transformation was equally profound. The driven tech CEO who measured success in profit margins and market share disappeared completely. The desperate, grieving mechanic who'd lived only to search for his children evolved into something new. A purposeful leader whose strength came from vulnerability rather than power. He declined offers to return to the tech industry, instead devoting himself to the foundation and, most importantly, to being present for Luna and Stella. His experience navigating complex systems to find his daughters made him uniquely qualified to guide other searching families. His compassion, forged in suffering, enabled him to connect with parents living their worst nightmares. Mr. Lexington, a foundation staff member, interrupted his thoughts one afternoon. The Johnson family is here. Their daughter's been missing for 18 days. Arthur nodded, setting aside the budget proposal he'd been reviewing. Bring them to my office, please. Before meeting them, he touched the framed photo on his desk, Luna and Stella laughing on a carousel, their faces bright with joy. These moments defined his new purpose, sitting with frightened parents, holding space for their terror and grief, offering not empty reassurances, but solid action plans, and the companionship of someone who truly understood. The foundation's work brought media attention, which Arthur carefully channeled toward their cause rather than his personal story. When pressed for interviews about the twins, he politely declined. "My daughters deserve privacy to heal and grow," became his standard response. Let's focus instead on the thousands of children still waiting to be found. At home, ordinary moments became extraordinary treasures. Homework struggles, bedtime stories, teaching the girls to ride bikes, family movie nights where they built blanket forts in the living room, the simple routine of making breakfast together each morning. On the twins' 9th birthday, Arthur watched them blow out their candles, surrounded by new friends from school and neighbors who had become like extended family. "What did you wish for?" he asked them later, after guests had departed. Luna and Stella exchanged one of their silent communications, a glance that contained an entire conversation. "We didn't wish for anything, Papa," Stella answered. "Because we already have everything we need," Luna finished. That night, Arthur wrote in his journal, a practice suggested by his own therapist. "Today, I realized, we are no longer healing, we are simply living. The past hasn't disappeared, but it no longer defines us. The girls are thriving, not just surviving. They laugh without shadows in their eyes. They plan for futures bright with possibility. They trust that tomorrow will come and bring good things with it." The healing power of unconditional love had accomplished what seemed impossible. It had rebuilt what was broken, restored what was lost, and created something new and beautiful from the fragments. Not every story of missing children ends with reunion. Not every trauma leads to triumph. Arthur knew this better than most, which was why the foundation worked tirelessly for those still searching, still waiting, still hoping. But his family's journey, from prosperity to poverty, from completeness to devastating loss, from despair to miraculous reunion, stood as testimony to the resilience of the human spirit and the bond between parent and child that transcends even the darkest circumstances. For Arthur, Luna, and Stella Lexington, the stars had aligned again, and in their reunion, countless others found a reason to keep believing in miracles. From the depths of despair to the heights of hope, Arthur and his twin daughters have shown us the extraordinary power of love, determination, and resilience. Their story isn't just remarkable, it's life-changing. It reminds us that even in our darkest moments, light can find its way back. The bond between parent and child truly can overcome impossible odds. If this journey has touched your heart or inspired you to appreciate the connections in your own life, please share this video so others can experience this incredible story. The Twin Stars Foundation continues its vital work today, bringing hope to families searching for their missing children. What part of Arthur, Luna, and Stella's story moved you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more powerful, true stories that will renew your faith in humanity, subscribe to Life-Changing Tales now. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary stories are the ones that remind us what truly matters.